Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We just have a couple more minutes that we'll wait for others to join as well. But if you'd like to go ahead and check your mic, this is a great opportunity to do that.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. This is Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Robert.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Howdy.
Good morning.
I had to be Jeff saying howdy.
That's
Am I
that's my
wrong?
that's my little form of gentle rebellion at UT. I went to A&M, so I say howdy all the time at UT. It's just my way of like,
I knew it was you.
yeah, I love it.
Good morning. We'll start in just a minute. Thank you for your patience.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our last quarterly meeting of this fiscal year, the LTAC Advisory Committee. We always start off with a bit of a reminder about the open meetings act protocols for virtual meetings. So just as a reminder, all members to maintain quorum must be visible at all times. Members should be seen clearly, so check your lighting. We can't see your face clearly, and facial expressions must be visible. Members should only be off camera during breaks and of course our subcommittee work. So thank you for minding those rules. And at this point, we will take roll. And Dr. Lofters, if you would handle those duties for us.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everyone. I just will call your name and just please let me know if you're here. Patrick is here. Charlene is here. Luke Dowden.
I'm here.
Janet Camps.
Present.
Tim Snyder. Oscar Hernandez. Sarah Lee.
Here.
Lydia Tenna,
Here.
was that Lydia?
Yes.
Okay. Janae Higgins,
Here.
Alicia Lloyd,
Here.
Nikki Whiteside,
Here.
Robert Green,
I'm here.
Patricia Abigail,
Here.
Gerald James, Megan Weatherly,
Here.
Jeff Creels,
Here,
Poonam Kumar,
Here.
Brett Welch, Pam Morgan,
Here.
Michelle Giles,
Here.
Wade Redmond,
Here.
Aaron McGough,
Here.
Michael Robertson,
Here.
and Esmeralda Gonzalez.
Recording in progress.
Here. Here.
We check the last ones again. Tim Snyder, Oscar Hernandez, Daryl James, Brett Welch,
I think you probably need me down for Brett Welch. I'm replacing him, Ashley Dawkins.
Ashley, okay, that's down. Thank you very much. All right. And actually, we do have quorum. I would like to move one more housekeeping reminder. If you have your name, make sure that your name on your Zoom screen has your name on it instead of some other kind of acronym. Your name and your institutional acronym will be just fine. So just to make sure that you have the correct label. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lockers. Appreciate that. And welcome, Ashley. I was trying to remember who you were representing and now I recall that Brett had taken on some provostial duties. So welcome to our team. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, thank you.
So I have on my agenda here that we were going to slide something in related to activities about this committee. So we have an annual report that we provide to the Commission on Academic and Workforce Success annually. And it's not on the consent agenda. I actually come and present that. And then the subsequent day that is considered and approved by the board. Or I think it's actually an information item, but it's a great privilege to get to highlight the work of this team and the many members and subcommittees and the incredible work that's been done in the past year relative to the new approval processes for distance education and implementing the rules that we also help to shape. So just wanted to, and of course, all the work that we've been doing around AI and A2I, adapting to innovation, had the opportunity to present that to the live cause membership and the others in attendance. And a copy of that report is included, it's circulated with the materials for this meeting. So just wanted to let you know that we are getting the word out about the great work that everyone's doing and the commitment you've made to serve on this committee. And next, I would like to ask you to review the meetings, or rather the summary notes from our last meeting, which was June 21st of this year. And then I would consider a motion to approve unless there are any additions or edits.
Robert Green moves to approve.
All right, somebody spoke, but we could not catch the name. Who
Robert.
spoke?
Robert
Robert
Green.
Green?
I move to approve.
All right, is there a second?
I moved to second.
And who had the second?
Nikki. Whiteside.
Nikki, thank you. Sorry, I should probably look at the screen in front of me. I might be able to see better who is speaking. All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Appears to be unanimous.
Unanimous.
All right, so no need to call for other votes. Motion is approved. Thank you very much. All right, the next order of business is to recognize our members with terms ending as of tomorrow, I guess officially, but August of this year. As I think everybody knows, service is for 3-year terms or unfinished terms if you are stepping into someone's role. And those are staggered so that we have some continuity across the committee over time. So we had the good fortune of many of the members whose terms were ending were nominated and approved to continue serving. So if you look on our roster sheet, you'll see that there are numerous people on this last meeting of the year roster sheet that have 24 on them. But if it's not one of the 3 people that I'm going to mention next, those people are continuing to serve new 3-year terms. The people who are ending their terms are the following. Dr. Lydia Tina from Northwest Campus of El Paso Community College, Dr. Sarah Lee, Campus Provost for Icon Virtual Campus, Collin College, and Megan Weatherly, Director, Center for Teaching and Learning at Stephen F. Austin University. And I just want to thank you and congratulate you on representing your institution so well and contributing to all the efforts of our group and the subcommittees that you've served on and your active participation in these meetings. We certainly appreciate it. And I know some of you have been on the committee before and then come back. So I highly suspect that that may be the case with the 3 who are stepping off this time. So be watchful if you're interested in serving again to have your institution nominate you next late spring, I think is usually when those come out into early summer. So again, thank you, Lydia, Sarah, and Megan. We greatly appreciate your service to this body. I don't know how, if we were all together, we could clap or something, but they would do this, but great, thank you. All right, and our next item of business, and this is a heavy one, is discussion of proposed Department of Education rules regarding distance education. And we have as our guest this morning, Dr. Van Davis, WCET Chief Strategy Officer, always a fantastic resource to help us with these heavy issues. So Dr. Davis, thank you for being with us. I understand there were no materials to be circulated, so nobody's missing anything. And we welcome your comments at this time.
Thank you very much, Patrick. So just to set the stage, some of you may remember that earlier this year, the Department of Education went through a winter rulemaking. There were negotiated rulemaking committee meetings in January, February, and March of this year that covered a number of things: return to Title IV, cash management, distance education, state authorization reciprocity, and accreditation were all on the agenda, as well as a couple of other sundry items. We were waiting for the department to release proposed regulations for public comment. The department has done that. Public comment ended last week, last Friday, actually, to be exact. And just to remind you of the process, the department has an obligation to respond to all public comments. And then if it puts forward final rules by November 1st of this year, then those would go into effect on July 1st, 2025. It is a very tight timeline for the department, although we do anticipate that they are going to try their darndest to get those final rules out by November 1st. They have indicated that they very much want these rules to go into effect next year. There were 3 notable things that were not a part of the proposed rules that were released. The department did not release rules on state authorization reciprocity. They did not release rules on cash management, which included inclusive access, and they did not release rules on accreditation. But everything else they released rules for and are on the table for July 1st implementation, assuming they can make that November 1st deadline. So what I thought I would do today is just sort of quickly go through and give you a briefing on what those proposed regulations are.
Excuse me, I want to interpret. Can you repeat the ones that were not included again?
Sure. State authorization reciprocity, cash management, which included inclusive access, and accreditation. So we think that those will be released sometime this fall as an NPRM, notice of proposed rulemaking, which would then open public comment. But there's no way that they can release them, do a 30-day public comment, and respond to public comments by November 1st for those. So the earliest you might see those rules go into effect would be July 1st, 2026. And all of this, I should also sort of provide the caveat to all of this that it assumes that there is not a change in administration. There's nothing that we've seen that makes us think that a Harris Department of Education would act significantly different than the current Department of Education. Everything indicates that should President Trump be reelected, that Department of Education would be vastly different, and these regulations could potentially be overturned through the Congressional Review Act. What I thought I'd do this morning is just sort of give you a quick overview of those regulations that were released for public comment, so that you have an idea of what is potentially on the table next year. We don't think the department's going to make significant changes. The pattern of this department is that they take public comment, they respond to it in the preamble, but they tend to not make any sort of significant changes to the rules that they put out for public comment. So I think there's a very good likelihood that what I'm about to describe to you will be the final rules, although there is still a slight chance that the department might make some changes. So the first area is disallowing financial aid for asynchronous clock hour courses and programs. You may remember this one is very straightforward. The department wants to do away with allowing for Title IV financial aid for asynchronous clock hour courses and programs. The rationale that they provided was that they questioned the quality of those programs, and they question whether or not students are actually completing the required clock hours asynchronously. The second rule that the department put out for public comment had to do with attendance taking in distance education classes. So under this proposed rule, you would be required to take attendance in all distance education courses. And specifically, that attendance would have to document the last instance of academic engagement. And that's the language that the department uses, the last instance of academic engagement for each student. This is for return to Title IV purposes. Right now, the process is that if a student appears to have dropped out at the end of the semester, then you go back and you figure out what the last date of attendance was, that last engagement in an academic activity. But you only do it for those students that have dropped out. The shift here is that you would be required to do that for all students. That's the first half of the attendance taking. The second half is, and this is the language the department uses, within 14 days of a student's last date of attendance, the institution must effectively withdraw the student. Now, there is some confusion there. There's certainly some questions about what effectively withdraw the student means. The department did not define that in the proposed regulations. Hopefully, if this moves forward, they would provide some guidance in the preamble. But institutions would be required to at least begin, if not completely withdraw a student after 14 days of non-attendance that is unexcused. So that's attendance taking. There's one exception to that, and that's dissertation. That is the only exception, though. So the attendance taking, for those of you that have competency-based education programs that are online, this would apply to those competency-based education programs. Although negotiators asked the department to make an exception for competency-based programs, the department declined to do so. So the only exception to attendance taking in distance education is for dissertation courses. So that's attendance taking. The third area is creating a virtual location for IPEDS reporting purposes. So institutions would be required to report all of their distance ed courses and students under a third location category of virtual location. In addition to that, so in addition to reporting students, so the department said that it wanted to do this for two reasons. It wants to better understand distance education. I'll come back to that in a moment. And then it also wants to make sure that should an institution decide to close its distance education programs, those students would have access to closed institution benefits. So let me go back to the reporting and understanding distance education better. The department says that it wants to collect, so it not only wants to know what students are enrolled in distance education programs in a virtual under this virtual location, but it also wants to collect information such as, and I'm going to quote here, program oversight, audits, looking at outcome metrics, and college scorecard program level data, including debt, earnings, and completion. So it appears that the department wants to significantly increase the amount of information that institutions report around distance education programs. That is not something that the department said during the negotiated rulemaking committee meetings. This was new to us. So that's virtual location. Related to virtual location, the department is putting forward a definition of a distance education course that tracks very closely to the definition that is in IPEDS. But it would require institutions to report an instance of every student in a distance education course. So the department wants to know what students are enrolled in distance education. The purpose here is the department again says that they want to better understand the outcomes of distance education. And they want to collect data to, and I'm going to quote here again, better assess the effectiveness of distance education and compare its outcomes with those of traditional in-person instruction. So the department has basically put forward that they want to compare distance education outcomes with face-to-face outcomes. That would require institutions to report a significant amount of student-level disaggregated data. Now, the department did not put forward in these proposed regulations exactly what that data would be. What they did say is that they would engage institutions in an opportunity to comment on the data that would be reported at a later date, and that the data collection, this specific piece around data collection, would go into effect on July 1st, 2026. But given the data that the department wants to collect around virtual location, I think it's safe to say that there would be a significant data collection around disaggregated student data. There was one other issue that has been sort of off in the wings that we've been waiting for the department to begin to act on, and that's third-party servicer agreements. You may remember that the department put forward guidance last year around third-party servicers that significantly expanded what was considered a third-party servicer. to include any servicer that touched a Title IV program, including potentially learning management system servicers. The department received significant pushback against that. They have said we have been waiting for them to release new guidance. They have now said that they are not going to release new guidance, but instead they're going to put this through negotiated rulemaking. The unified calendar, which I won't get into what that is because that's way geekier than even I am. But the unified calendar indicates that the department wants to put forward a notice for proposed rulemaking around third-party servicers in June of next year. In order to do that, they would have to enter into negotiated rulemaking either late this year or early next year. So that's off in the wings, along with still we're waiting on what the proposed regulations will be for accreditation, state authorization, reciprocity, and cash management, including inclusive access. So like I said, the department has to respond to the public comments that it received. It has to respond to all public comments. If they're able to do that and get those regulations out by November 1st, then they would go into effect on July 1st, 2025. There's one other step here. In addition to the department having to respond to all public comments, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, will also take a series of 12-866 meetings. These are 30-minute meetings with personnel from the Office of Management and Budget, as well as a representative from the Department of Education. Anyone can sign up for that meeting. And what OMB wants to hear is what is going to be the financial, what's going to be the fiscal impact on institutions, and how would proposed regulations impact the administration's agenda. Anyone can sign up for a 12-866 meeting. Normally, OMB doesn't get many takers. We think that may be different this time because of these sort of significant data requirements that the department is putting forward. So department has to respond to all public comments. OMB has to hold its 12-866 meetings. OMB, in theory, could tell the department there's problems with these regulations, you have to make changes. I'm not aware of OMB ever doing that, to tell you the truth. And then if the department can jump through all of those hoops, and they seem to be very motivated to do so, by November 1st, then these regulations would go into effect July 1st, 2025. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
I have a few questions, but I'd like to open the floor to our committee members, see if anyone has any questions for Van.
Van, this is Nikki Whiteside with San Jacinto College. On the 12-866 meetings, if those are to occur, what would be the timeline when those would start, and where would an institution go to sign up or to monitor that?
We don't know when those would start yet. I'm going to guess that it would be sometime in October, late September, early October. WCET does a very good job of monitoring all of this. We will continue to monitor all of this, and you can use our Frontiers blog posts as a guide for that. We have already decided that we will request a 12-866 meeting, and we will also make sure that we post a blog post so that the public knows when those meetings are starting and how to go about requesting one.
Thank you.
And Nikki, you can always contact me directly as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have sorry, I have a question. Redmond from Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center. I know sometimes we can get in the semantics of what distance education is, but I want to make sure I understand. They're talking about any distance education course or distance education programs, because those vary. For example, I may have a face-to-face program that has a few online or hybrid courses. So when we start tagging on another what was stated as campus, if you will, so we have people all over the state, for that course, would it be considered not, say, in a city, but we'd have to have a virtual as a campus? I'm just asking, that could vary and every course is going to get real complicated. I just thought I'd ask if you have clarification on that.
Our interpretation of it, Wade, is that it's on the course level and not the program level.
Thank you.
But that could change. This is something that I think that folks have asked for clarification from the department. So, and let me give a little bit of nuance around that. So the virtual location would probably be program level reporting, but in addition to that, you would still have to report enrollments in all distance education courses. So it's sort of a twofer. The department wants program level data on distance education programs, but then it wants student level data on distance education courses.
Thank you.
Ben, would that reporting be a separate process from what's currently done with iPads?
It is not clear, Patrick. The
Okay.
department did not address that in the proposed regulation.
It seems like there might be a lot of overlap, but having a completely different process increases that reporting burden instead of just changing an existing one. So,
well, you know, the difference here that's really key is iPads is aggregated student data.
Right.
The department is asking now for potentially for disaggregated student data.
so they could potentially improve the process by not requiring some of the aggregated data because they have it unaggregated and they can do the analysis to aggregate it in the ways they need. There could be some offset possibly, but that all seems cloudy right now, correct?
Correct. There has been nothing indicated about the mechanics of how this would take place. There is also some questions about the legality of this. You may remember, you may know that the last reauthorization of the Higher Education Authorization Act specifically prevents the Department of Education from a student level data system, the development of a student level data system. So there is some question about whether or not this would constitute a student level data system.
So of the rules that are probably coming out by November, how problematic are they for our institutions in Texas? And if you had to rank them, which one is likely to represent the greatest burden for institutions?
We think that the distance education attendance taking could be a significant burden to institutions because right now, you only have to go back and figure out last date of attendance for students that have clearly dropped out. The shift here would be figuring out last date of attendance for every student. So that means faculty and institutions would have to be tracking the academic engagement for every single distance education student continuously. And then they would have to effectively withdraw students after 14 days of non-attendance, unexcused non-attendance.
Non-engagement, right?
Yeah, so we think that that could be a significant burden for institutions. We spent some time talking with NASFA and ACRO, and we're convinced that most institutions probably don't have the infrastructure to easily do that.
How does that compare to how withdrawals are handled for face-to-face meetings? Is there any requirement that institutions actively manage attendance of face-to-face students and withdraw them if they haven't reached certain engagement benchmarks? Or is this only distance education that will be treated this way?
I believe that this is going to be unique to distance education. I could be wrong there. I'm not as familiar with the R2T4 regulations because I don't live in the financial aid world. And I'm generally usually grateful for that because it is an incredibly complex world. But I do think that this is a departure, and distance education is going to be treated differently. And that is a theme with these regulations, is sort of treating distance education differently than a face-to-face modality.
Van, this is Ashley Dawkins from Lamar. The statement you made about disallowing financial aid for asynchronous clock hour courses, that would count for entire programs that would be asynchronous as well, correct?
If they're clock hour.
Okay.
So just this is clock hour, not credit hour, but disallowing federal financial aid, Title IV aid for asynchronous clock hour courses and programs.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Van, are you aware, sorry, let me turn my mic on. Van, are you aware of any efforts to do an independent cost analysis of each of these by institutional type or geographic region? Because as we have the opportunity to present in those meetings, it would be helpful if there were some pre-existing baseline of here's what these costs are likely to be. Certainly, we may be able to determine that at our own institutions, but has there been any cost analysis done that might be available to us as a reference?
So the department is required to do cost analysis whenever they issue proposed regulations as part of an NPRM. You can pull that down and take a look at it. I will tell you that we believe, and when we've spoken with institutions, every institution that we've talked to believes that the department's cost analysis wildly underestimates the cost. The best cost analysis that I've seen so far is the cost analysis that Phil Hill has done. Phil is an independent education consultant who does fantastic analysis. And in one of his blog posts in the last 2 or 3 weeks, he went through and did a time and cost analysis for distance education attendance taking that is probably more realistic than the department's. So you can go to his website, it's Phil Hill and Associates, and you should be able to pull that blog down and take a look at the analysis that Phil did. That's the only, outside of the analysis that the department was required to present, that's the only other analysis for the cost of distance education attendance taking that I'm aware of.
Excellent. That was exactly the type of information I was hoping to learn about, because when I say independent, certainly what the department put out was not independent, and many felt that it vastly underestimated those associated costs. And whether it was already being done or not, they assume that many institutions already had this in place, and that seems certainly to be a stretch from polling that we did informally with this group previously, and what we've read others commenting on in the many forums we participate in. So thank you for that. So Phil Hill and Associates, that did come out in the last few weeks, so really helpful if you want to raise possible concerns internally and make sure that your leadership knows that these will have real costs and budget impact. And so really need to pay attention and be engaged and advocate for common sense, I think, but advantageous to your institution.
Van, I had a question. I had read somewhere that the ending of the Chevron deference might give institutions the ability to challenge federal regulations more now. Do you see any large agency taking this on?
So the challenge around ending Chevron with Loper Bright is that, as we put it, regulations are regulations until they aren't. So ending the Chevron deference does not prevent the department from putting these forward as regulations. It just means that there might be a court challenge to them that would take a while to wend its way through the court system. And so unless you could get a judge to issue a stay, you would still be required to fulfill these regulations. It is within the realm of possibility that there might be a collection of institutions or professional agency or professional organization that might challenge some of these regulations. I suspect that the Cosmetology College Association might very well challenge the elimination of Title IV federal financial aid for clock hour courses and programs. If they don't, somebody will. So that one, I think definitely there would be a challenge. But again, unless you can get a judge to delay implementation of the regulations, you're still going to be on the hook for fulfilling these regulations until something works its way through the courts.
And for the clock hour regulation in particular, you mentioned cosmetology as an example. Which other types or areas of programs is it likely to impact?
We've heard that it could impact any program that's using asynchronous education for theory courses. And as a clock hour program, it could impact welding. We've heard that it might impact realty. We've heard that it might impact computer science. So any vocational or technical program that is receiving Title IV federal financial aid and is at least using distance education for perhaps its theory courses, this would impact.
That's scary. Any sense at a national level or state level, Texas, how big that impact is, how many hours are currently offered in aggregate in our state in those types of format, asynchronous clock hours?
That would be a question better asked of your coordinating board colleagues. I don't have access to that data.
Very good, thank you. Other questions from the committee?
If I may, I have one question.
Of course.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Ben. It was very informative. I was thinking about this in terms of like organizational structure, institutional structure, especially with the virtual location. You know, a lot of institutions now have a structure where they have like an e-campus. Do you see where this might be an advantageous process or advantageous practice for institutions to start having those kind of campuses? I'm thinking a bit more of like, administrative structure. Would we see any trend? Would that be advantageous for institutions to take that path?
It might be, depending upon how the institution is structured and how much distance education an institution has. There are advantages and disadvantages to that type of centralized distance education structure. You know, certainly one of the things that we've heard anecdotally from our members is that with the increase in distance education after COVID, that some of our institutions where it was centralized, distance education has started being decentralized as it's gone more into the academic departments after COVID. So I think it depends on how the institution, I think it depends on a number of variables, including the politics of offering distance education within the institution and what sort of infrastructure already exists there. The thing that I want to sort of double down on with the virtual location is that it's not just that the department is indicating that it's not just enrollments that they're interested in, but they're interested in outcome measurements for distance education programs because they want to compare those to face-to-face programs, including collecting college scorecard data.
Thank you, thank you.
And Jan, do you have a sense of what the motivation for that is? So they want to compare them and then do what with that information? Ultimately, is there some suspicion that it would impact funding if they determine that it's not an equivalent experience or it's not as good as face-to-face instruction?
The department has not been transparent about that. They have not said what their rationale is, except that they want to better understand the outcomes of distance education compared to face-to-face. I'm going to take off my WCET hat now. I'm not speaking as a representative of WCET. I'm speaking as somebody who has been an observer for a very long time on the state and federal level. I think based on the comments that we heard during negotiated rulemaking, certainly some of the negotiators felt that distance education was less than face-to-face, and we did not hear the department say anything to contradict those statements. I'm worried, and again, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not on behalf of WCET. I'm personally worried about the department deciding that it wants to do away with asynchronous clock hour, Title IV federal financial aid. I worry that that could be a precedent and could be the thin end of the wedge. I don't think this department fully understands the extent of which distance education plays in improving student access. I don't think that they fully comprehend how large distance education is and what would happen if it went away. But again, the department has not been transparent about what it wants to do with that information outside of compare it to face-to-face. I'll put my WCET hat back on now.
Reminder that this is a recorded meeting, then.
But he took it out.
I know it's a recorded meeting. That's why I've been very careful to say I was representing myself there and not WCET.
So we've talked about a lot of concerns that we have. I have these two more questions. One is, are there some opportunities here? It seems like there are unlikely to be any major changes between what have been published and people have commented on and what will be released. Are there any opportunities? Is there any silver lining here that we should go, well, okay, here's something that we can focus on, help our institutions, help students? Yeah, I'll stop with that one. It's kind of meaty.
So, you know, we do have a dearth of data on distance education. All of you, though, know that one of the challenges in doing research around the effectiveness of distance education is that you can't divorce the modality from student characteristics. So there's all sorts of things that can impact a student's success, and modality is only one of those things. And so, although it would be nice to have more data, I think you're still going to have significant challenges around figuring out what to do with that data and not falling prey to correlation equals causation. Because again, we all know that modality is only one factor in student success. That there's, and especially, you know, we have post-traditional learners who are more likely to enroll in distance education. They're also more likely to be juggling family and work obligations as well as school obligations. All of that can have an impact on their success, on their academic success. And that is completely divorced from the modality. So I think it's a double-edged sword. It would be nice to have more data, but I'm not sure that we would get the data that we need to be able to do that level of analysis. And there is a silver lining to the virtual location. It would allow students to more readily access discharge if their online program was to go away and they couldn't pivot to a face-to-face program. And that certainly is a good thing. We would want those students to have better access to discharge under those circumstances, because it is akin to the closure of a campus for those students to lose that modality. So that certainly would be a silver lining as well.
There's a bit of irony to this because we've spent a decade trying to remove barriers that made distance ed to make distance ed the same as on campus.
Yes.
Hey, Van, thanks so much for coming today and filling us in on all this. This is really interesting and useful. Quick question, you mentioned the possibility of legal challenges to the clock hour requirement. Given what you said about how these regulations could contravene the the last reauthorization of the Higher Ed Act, do you foresee any bodies legally challenging the attendance taking provisions, especially considering the costs involved? I have to imagine that some larger entities like Penn State World Campus or SUNY Online or some of these really or Arizona State, some of these places with massive online operations would be really in front of that. Have you heard anything to that effect?
I've not heard any rumblings. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but I don't think anyone is showing their cards yet.
All right, thank you.
I have one question. Did the department by any chance consider the disallowing financial aid for the asynchronous courses, maybe to cap it to a certain clock hour limit, or is that something that was not considered?
No, ma'am, it was not.
Van, this may be my last question, but if you were to give advice to our colleagues here on the call today of one thing that they could do between now and when these rules are released, what would you suggest? You mentioned the 12/8/66 meeting option. Is that it, or is there something else perhaps that you would suggest?
I would suggest that you need to you need to pull down the NPRM and you need to very carefully look at it so that you can begin to have conversations on your campuses about what the implementation effect of this would be and how you would go about trying to implement these regulations. I don't think this is something that you want to wait until the last minute to start trying to figure out how you're going to do. Again, we've not seen the department make significant changes. I could be wrong. They could this time. It's certainly within their right to do so. We just haven't seen this department do that. They don't make significant changes once they release rules for public comment between public comment version and the final version. There's some small changes around the edge, but nothing huge. So I don't think they're going to make huge changes to the final regulations. So I would pull down the language and the proposed regulations from the NPRM and start having conversations on your campus about how would you go about implementing attendance for distance education courses. How would you go about doing reporting for a virtual location? And we don't know what data they're going to want for distance education students. They did say that they would put forward a proposed language for that in the future and give institutions an opportunity to comment on it. And the distance education student data would not go into effect until July 1st, 2026. But it's probably not too early to also, start having conversations on your campus about what would data reporting and data collection on distance education students potentially look like, who would be involved. And what would it take? Do you have the systems in place to be able to do that? So I think trying to get ahead of how you might implement these regulations would be a very wise thing to do.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions from our committee? All right, this was one of our longer segments in agendas as they go, but really a valuable use of our time. And Van, we appreciate you so much for being with us today, as you've been in the past, and hopefully will be again at our next meeting, because by then we'll have these rules implemented and may have new proposed rules or be in negotiated rulemaking for previous rules that were proposed. So we really, really count on and appreciate your guidance and the time that you spend with us in these meetings. So thank you, Van, and we will certainly see you again soon.
Sure, and just one last thing, WCET tracks all of this very closely. I think most of y'all know that. The way that we put forward our analysis and information on what's going on is through our blog series, Frontiers, which you can access on the WCET website. So you can continue to use that as a resource, and folks are always welcome to contact me directly if I don't know the answer. I work with some really brilliant people in Russ Poulin and Cheryl Dowd, and we can figure out the answer.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that. I can strongly endorse the Frontiers blog and of course the availability of the WCET team to answer questions and consult. Just an incredible team of people, and grateful we get to interact with them and benefit from their expertise. But thank you again, Van.
Sure.
So item number 6 in our agenda, and I think that, I'm sorry, item number 5 is just to see if there was any follow-up actions, any additional discussion that we wanted to have as a group about the rules, or if there were any proposed action. So I don't know that there is, but we wanted to leave that possibility that there was more questions or more discussion that we would have as a body, or that we might have some proposed action, given that public comment has ended and has not been started for the next set of rules. I'm not sure there will be, but wanted to open it to that possibility. So any discussion about the rules or anything else that Van commented on? Not, we will skip ahead. So great questions, by the way, from everyone. And so now we can move to item 6, which is discussion of institutional plans for distance education review process. And Dr. Loftus, that is your agenda item.
Thank you, Kevin. I was going to give a brief update on what we've been discussing here at the coordinating board with the IPDE process. So far, for our anticipated institutions, we have not received a IPD submission yet. So we're still waiting for that person to come in. Now, in the process of having discussions about the IPDE and when institutions should submit, we started to come across some questions we had, and I think it was brought up once before about the final disposition of a SACS reaffirmation process and when that was. We had talked about sometimes that you might go through your SACS reaffirmation and then they might require some other actions be taken by the institution and in a certain monitoring period for that to happen. So we're still discussing that process of what is the final disposition of your reaffirmation. When is that? We're in the process of having those discussions. We also noticed that we might need to make some slight adjustments to the language of the rules for the IPD process, because right now the way it's worded, it allows an interpretation that anyone who has an IPD should have one resubmitted after 10 years, and everyone who has an IPD has a 10-year-old, at least 10-year-old IPD. So we're looking at that language to readjust it. Yeah, much longer, really, because everyone put in their IPDs in the old process before they could initially offer anything through distance education, either online or off campus. So, but those are all first submitted in 2003, I would say, 2003 and 4. So therefore, everybody is 10 years late past their initial submission. So we're looking at that language to make sure that we best represent how we want the process to work. It's not for everybody to submit it now, it's after your next reaffirmation process. So we're looking at that language. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was Sarah Lee has made a rubric that we were going to be discussing in our operations work group for the IPDE process. I'm looking forward to that one, and we can report on that when we come out of our work group meetings. Those are the main activities that have been going on IPDE here at the coordinating board. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Director Loftus, we had one submission that was out of cycle.
Yes.
And we weren't sure how to deal with that because then that would be kind of disconnected from their SAC COC accreditation, which we use as part of the review process. So I wondered if you could talk about that.
Right, we have one submission that was, one IPD that was submitted. However, it wasn't on one of the ones that was one of our anticipated institutions based on the effective date of the rules. Our rules went in December 1st. And this submission was sort of out of, well, it was out of cycle. So we're deciding, how are we going to address that? And that's what caused all these other conversations about the rules and so forth. So I was going to bring that up to the operations committee today. And we've decided, we want to know how we want to treat this first one. We've already talked briefly.
Right.
General Counsel, go ahead.
It's a legal question first and foremost about how to address this within the rules as they're written, but I think it's also sort of an operational question. So we'll talk about that in the operations work group.
Correct. I was going to bring that up as well when we discussed the rubric. And also bring up the operations, the rule language that we were talking about.
I have a comment / question, and I know it'll come up in our subcommittee, but I was wondering if the larger group had an opinion. As you know, we're going through the process, so I've probably read the document quite a bit. This does not apply to us, so this is not a self-promoting comment. But if we're going to use some kind of scoring rubric, if you look at number 2, that is really a yes/no question. It's, do you have plans to grow? Yes, no. Well, in light of some of the things we're hearing, there could be some campuses that say, no, we have no plans to grow. We're going to stay where we are. If that is the answer, yes, no, then it negates number 3. And so when we consider a scoring rubric, you're going to have to take into account whether those 2 items should even be scored. Because if the answer is no, and we don't have a directive that we must be growing, then they should not be counted against.
Yeah, can you remind us what question 3 is that's negated by question 2?
Yeah, so number 2 is describe planning documents where goals are explicit to increase the number of programs in distance ed, essentially. I won't keep reading, but let's say the answer to that question is no, we have no plans to grow as of the reporting of this document. Well, number 3 becomes describe those plans for expanding distance education that also demonstrate the institution's blah, blah, blah. But if you answered no on number 2, it really makes number 3 an invalid question. And so now you have a rubric that you could score with 8 questions, which is fine, but you're going to have to decide what value now is given to questions 2 and 3, if in fact the answer to 2 is no.
Good point.
Good point, yeah, point taken.
Thank you, Dan.
And Sarah, with the existing matrix, are questions 2 and 3 scored?
Yes, I think we can talk about this in the operations subcommittee today. I think it's just a simple matter of how we want to make sure that that's denoted in the rubric, that we're not saying that you're required to have a plan. If the answer is no, then that satisfies that piece. So that just needs to be clear in
But
the
if you
rubric
give a
format.
point to an institution that, I mean, if you give a point to institutions that say yes, and then they get a point on number 3, but you have an institution that says no, so their very best score could be 8, whereas someone else's very best score could be 10, but they are exactly the same quality of IPDE reporting. So I'm only bringing it up to the whole group because I know we are going to discuss it. And we're really close to sending ours in, so I know you're going to have something ready to go. And I just wanted that point to be considered.
We'll certainly consider it in the subcommittee. I think it's a good point. And I'm in agreement with Sarah. I think there's a way to organize and orient the rubric where it doesn't penalize you regardless of what the answer is.
This is a fun process for all of us of building the airplane while we're flying it, so I think we're on, we're in it together. Thanks for bringing up that point. And I'm sure that this is a really fun process for you in particular right now, so thank you for being the guinea pig too.
And I think it's no surprise to us that when we get into the details of it, that there are things that we didn't consider when we were working out what the processes would be and how to score them, et cetera. So healthy conversation and an improved product. So appreciate everybody's commitment to that.
I think Dr. Dowden has a question, comment?
Yes.
I just wanted to compliment Pam because what you all just witnessed is how she's really been open and transparent. I mean, they're actively going through the process, so it's been fortunate for us to have that level of feedback. So Pam, I just wanted to recognize you. I know we say thank you in the subcommittee, but that's not streamed. And so I know that there are members and we just really appreciate your engagement. And you do it in such a professional way that we know that you have the consideration of all institutions and not just your own. And I think that says a lot about your integrity and your character. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for that. And
Thanks, Luke. That's really kind because I'm seeing the faces of some of the people that was on that early committee with me. And you all know I came to this kicking and screaming. And so I'm really trying to be objective. And I've told you before, I do think it's a valuable process now that we're in it. And Andrew, I don't even know if you have an IPD report from us because I think we started in 97. And so it might be due.
The
last millennium.
You do, don't worry, you would know if we didn't have one. Yeah.
The other point that I wanted to make is Patrick, the 3 folks that are rotating off of LTAC, I'm very sad. They're all members of the operations subcommittee and are very engaged. We are going to need some reinforcements there. I just want to make that not something for us to solve today. But since we're talking about this process and definitely have 4 coming through review, we have 3 very strong subcommittee members and Megan and Sarah, and there's a third, y'all, I'm sorry, I'm for Lydia, that we're losing as of this after this meeting. So if we can just have that as a consideration for the next time we meet to make sure we can replace those folks soon. If there's someone that's so excited about this, they want to move from another subcommittee, we would welcome you gladly. And Sarah and Megan and Lydia, again, want to just acknowledge you while we have an opportunity and say thank you very much. And we're really going to miss you and your contributions. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Not to call out those of you who are rolling off in front of the whole group, but you are welcome to stay on and volunteer your time to do work if you like, and for things like the operations subcommittee, just saying.
Well, in the event that they do not, I just want to be prepared either way. Yes, we would welcome you to stay and assist.
Excellent. And Luke, when we go to subcommittee this afternoon, we'll have an opportunity to see if there are some folks who would like to shift, given that we have minimal turnover, but it impacts you differentially. And then as we have our new people on board for our next meeting, we can have those 3 new individuals choose and of course give them some opportunity to fill in where we need the numbers, like in your group, who is again differentially impacted by the departures. So and go ahead.
So we should start making the operations subcommittee sound really exciting for the next meeting, just like put together the elevator pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll work with Patrick on a video.
All right. And Pam, you may not consider this, but maybe over time you will. It's really been a gift that you're going through this because it gives us an opportunity to get that feedback and make changes and make it a good process for everybody who's going to come after you. So certainly appreciate your willingness after initially going, oh my gosh, why did I get struck by lightning? To really make it a meaningful process for your institution, but also for us who are trying to help guide and shape what that looks like for all institutions. So again, thank you. And thank you, Luke, for
Yeah.
both recognizing her and your role in making all of this successful. So, and I know you have a great team that supported that as well. So always plenty of time to share gratitude.
Great. Pam is a gift to us for many reasons, but that is definitely one of them. That's a tough role to be in right now, so thank you.
I can imagine. Hey, the exciting part of our committee, I'll say it since Luke didn't, is that Dr. Lofters is in there. And you all know how exciting he is.
He has a new truck.
We do.
Ooh, he
Go to
can tell
that
us about it.
maybe you might get to see the truck.
Also grandbaby pictures.
And grandbaby pictures, so, yeah, there's a pitch there. We should have fun, right? All right, I think that wraps it up for that agenda item. Do you have anything else in closing, Dr. Lofters?
Nothing else. Thank you very much.
All right, we are at roughly an hour and 15 minutes, so we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Actually, it's almost 10:16, so let's say come back at 10:21. And we will go to our slide until then. So see you back in about 5 minutes. You're welcome to turn off your cameras during the break. Thank you. All right. We still have some folks returning to the room here, but we would like to go ahead and welcome everybody back. So you can start turning your cameras on. And Dr. Lofters, it appears we have quorum. If you can just visually certify that we're still there. Yes, we are quorum. All right, we continue to have quorum, so we will get started. We are going to change the order of some agenda items to accommodate some of our esteemed guests who will be presenting. And those are under item 8, B and C. So they're both already on the call, so we want to go ahead and let them present to us. They're welcome to stick around afterwards, but we did want to move them up in the agenda, so they had other obligations, they could go on to those. So, and then we will cover item 8A after B and C, and then we'll return to item 7 regarding generative artificial intelligence activities. So with that, and I hope you're ready for Cam. We are ready to hear from you about state authorization reciprocity agreements.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. I appreciate you moving me up. I was busy doing work in the background, but I'm very glad on a Friday to be moved up. So I am so glad that I was available today to share some SARA updates with you. I believe several of you were able to join us last Friday for the first Texas SARA Forum. I hope if you attended that you enjoyed it and that it was beneficial to your institution. I did send a survey to all registrants. So if you received the survey and haven't responded, please do so in the next week or so. I want to ensure that future forums will meet the needs of Texas SARA participating institutions. I am currently, and that's what I was working on in the background, cleaning up and posting the slide deck and speaker notes on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board SARA webpage. I had hoped to have everything posted next week, but I believe we are doing some updates on our website and the slides might not get posted next week. It might be the following week that they are actually posted. Andrew had asked me to provide some highlights from the forum. Elisa Jaden from SREB provided an update on programs that SREB provides to its states and an update on the SARA Regional Steering Committee. Jared Abdurkin, who is the NC-SARA Director of Institutional Engagement and Initiatives, provided some really helpful NC-SARA resources and gave a preview of the Texas data numbers that were collected during the annual reporting in May and June of this year. That includes Texas students enrolling in other SARA institutions in other states and students enrolling in Texas SARA institutions. Then we had a very fast session with Marianne Boki, the NC-SARA president, and Cheryl Dowd from WCET SAN, who provided news about federal rulemaking and how to comment on the department's proposed rules that may affect your institution. And I very much appreciated Van's summary this morning. I thought it was very helpful as well. Cheryl then continued with a session on professional licensure disclosures and what institutions need to do to disclose professional licensure for those programs that do lead to licensure. And then I ended the day with tips on submitting renewal applications and asked for suggestions from institutions as to information that would be helpful to you all on the SARA process. As I said, Van gave a great summary of Department of Education rulemaking status. The NC-SARA board and its advisors also do not believe that we will see a proposed rule on state authorization reciprocity that can be commented on in time to be effective in July 2025. Like Van said, the earliest would be July 2026, which is probably a very good thing. As a reminder, in addition to being your Texas SPE and serving on the SARA Regional Steering Committee, I am currently a member of the NC-SARA Board of Directors and a member of their Consumer Protection and Policy Committee and NEG-REG Task Force. So if you ever have concerns about a SARA policy, please contact me and let me know, and I can assist you in submitting a policy proposal during the next round of proposals in early 2025. Right now, all 4 of the regional compacts have voted on the 2024 pending proposals. Any proposals that have received unanimous approval by the 4 compacts will be sent to the NC-SARA board and then implemented into SARA policy. During the first round of proposals that were adopted, some of the policy changes were effective January of 2024, and some were effective just this past July. Any policy changes implemented will, of course, be published so that institutions are aware of them and the implementation dates. I believe there will again be an NC-SARA webinar which would walk through those policy changes so that there's no surprises. I'm also very willing to walk institutions through the renewal process and answer questions for new SARA contacts who might be filling out the renewal application for the first time. However, the NC-SARA resources such as the SARA Institution Welcome Kit and the SARA 101 online course are great places to start if you are new to SARA policies and procedures. Even if you are an old hand at it, those are great resources to refamiliarize yourself with policies and procedures. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me. I believe my email address is on the website, on the coordinating board website, but it is my first and last name at highered.texas.gov. Or you can give me a call. If you give me a call, I will most likely answer you if you leave me a voicemail. And it's always helpful to let me know what your question is so that I can be prepared to answer it and look up any SARA policy that might inform your question. Do you have any questions for me? Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, and I think I will drop off if there are no questions.
Yes, Cam, thank you so much. Excellent report, and appreciate your representation on the board of NC-SARA. It is really important that we're represented in that way, and you're doing a very able job for us. So thank you, and thank you for making time to report and be with us here today. Did have a question about participation in that webinar last week. How many participants were there live? And certainly we want to promote it, the recordings and slides, but what was the magnitude of participation?
Yes, we had just right around 100 participants. So that was great. I realized it was not good timing, but it was the time that all the presenters could be there and that we could get a room to accommodate us. On the survey, I do ask for times when you absolutely think it's the worst time, and then for suggestions of when would be a good time to have an annual meeting. So I will take that into account, and we will try to get a good date when people can attend. And I did get comments that it is really important to have this in person so that you can have those side conversations and you can meet face to face with other people. So I think we will continue to have live meetings, and I hope to do that on an annual basis.
Great, thank you, Kim. Anything else before we get on with her Friday? All right,
Hey,
thank you
Cam.
so much again.
Patrick,
All right.
I just wanted to say publicly, Cam, I really appreciated that meeting last week, and thank you for coming here and giving this update as well for everybody who wasn't able to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right. Well, you all have a good weekend, and I hope you enjoy your long weekend.
Thank you, you too. Right, so now we will move on to our item C, 8C, which is discussion of House Bill 8. And we have Mr. Jeffrey Parks from the Department of Workforce Education, relatively new entity within the coordinating board. And I think you've been there about 10 months or so. And we appreciate your joining us this morning. Welcome. You can tell we're a friendly group. And just wanted to see what I know that there was a letter saying kind of what our interest in LTAC working with the Department of Workforce Education around the successful implementation of House Bill 8. And so that's what we would like to discuss with you today.
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Parks. I'm the Senior Director for Workforce Education Partnerships at the Coordinating Board. And yes, since I've been there about 10 months, my entire existence has been about putting together a stakeholder work group of leadership from across the state, and then getting that feedback and starting to pull things together out of House Bill 8. With that being said, the stakeholder work group is 16 individuals from both the credit side and non-credit side of the House at Texas Community Colleges. Vice presidents, deans, chief of staff, all around workforce education. And we've been meeting with them from the very beginning, starting back in our first meeting was in February. We met with the group and started to look at all the rules that we need to really focus on. And there were 5 rules that we focused on. And I'll talk about those in a minute here. And so it was getting that feedback from them. So we had a face-to-face meeting at the agency to start with, and then we had several Teams meetings to go through various rules and then get their feedback. It was great engagement. They gave us very good feedback so that we were able to actually craft the rules and make sure that they were going to be useful for the field. So we were trying to align the certificates and program approval processes and really speed things up. And there were several things that we were able to speed it up, the process, and get it, around the community college finance model, and really get it to focus in on getting that information through the process and actually get it approved. And then taking, practice into policy, and that was one of our goals as well. So those 5 rules that we focused on were the applied associate program approval. I would say, probably the biggest thing that was a standout on that was that one, we have a planning notification that's on the front end. In the past, it was actually a little bit further down in the process. But one thing for colleges to think about is as soon as you start to go, you know what, we want to start this program, we're requesting a planning notification, and that's based on a new rule to say, let us know. And all that notification is it's sending in, we're thinking about starting a program. Okay, great. Tell us what it is, and that's all we're asking. And then you can start to go through your process internally of everything. But that also allows us to give you information back. We'll give you information back on the regional outlook as far as that particular program that you're thinking about putting in place. Give you data back on that so that you'll have that data. And we're trying to get that to be consistent data. So we're going to give that information back to you. And then speeding up the process depending on how you're going to be implementing. Is it a revision to a program, or is it a completely new program? And really clarifying that process. The next one was local need course approval. There's never been a local need course approval in rule before. And so there was some confusion about what do I do? How do I get a local need course? For those of you who are not familiar with a local need course is, for for the college to be able to put in place for a course that is not currently in the Workforce Education Course Manual database. They go in and they have maybe an emerging technology in their area, or there is a course that, yeah, we'd like to teach these learning outcomes, but there's no course that we can find in the Workforce Education Course Manual database. Okay, great. Tell us what you want to do, and we'll approve that course, and then that becomes part of your inventory. So for instance, it'd be part of Del Mar College's inventory or Collin College's inventory. That's it. It's not available for everybody else in the state. Other people can use it if they'd like. And if there's 4 or more colleges that use that course, then it'll be looked at by the Workforce Education Course Manual Advisory Committee, and they'll make a recommendation to say, okay, there's a lot of colleges that are currently wanting to use this, more than 4. Then they'll look at everything to make sure the learning outcomes are, you know, very good learning outcomes, and they will put that course into a recommendation to come back to the coordinating board for approval to move into WECM. WECM's the acronym for the Workforce Education Course Manual. So that's really there to help colleges really understand the process, speed up the process, and provide guidance all the way through the process. Then the next one is that we looked at and worked on was the Career and Technical Education Course Maintenance and Approval. Once again, we didn't really have a maintenance process that was part of rule in the past. And we're trying to make sure that what happened in the past was we had guidelines, the guidelines for instructional programs and workforce education, referred to as GIPWE. And in those guidelines, as has been said several times, we weren't always exactly following statute. It was an interpretation of statute, but we weren't following statute. So now we've written rules, and we've actually got it into the rules based on what statute says. And so, for instance, in the CTE course maintenance and approval, now there's a way for a course to be looked at and reviewed, revised. We can make an addition, we can write an additional course if subject matter experts determine that that's necessary. And we can archive, which is what we've always done, but it's never been in rule. And so this is all done in a WECM workshop, and that's done by subject matter experts. So in the area of health or any technical area, there we bring together a group of people that are subject matter experts in that particular area. They review the courses and say, yep, that course looks good. Good to go. Okay, great. And then they sign off on that. Or, you know, the technology has changed. We need to update this course. Okay, let's write some new learning outcomes. Or maybe we need to change the course description. Or we maybe need to change what the title of the course is, whatever it may be. And so they update those courses. Or, of course, we provide data to them, which is called the frequency data report. They look at that particular set of courses or that course, for instance, and it's like, this course hasn't been used in 5 years. Okay, should we take it out of the inventory? Yeah, nobody's using it across the state, so let's take it out of the inventory. And so once again, we're trying to maintain that inventory. And if you want some, you know, useful information to be able to have at a dinner party, there's about 18,000 courses in the Workforce Education Course Manual. That's a lot to maintain. So, like I said, if you want to have that conversation at a dinner party, that's always a fascinating conversation for people to learn how many courses are in the database. So we are always trying to make sure that they're current and relevant, but if they're not needed, let's go ahead and remove those courses. The next one is and then of course, the approval process has been improved as well as far as the CTE course maintenance and approval process. Once again, it's based on, is it a course that needs to be put into WECM or not, and getting through that approval process. The next one is CTE certificate approval. That's probably the area that's the biggest interest for people. And with CTE approval, we're talking about everything that is, the backbone of House Bill 8, which is the same as it always has been, which is level 1 and level 2 certificates. But now we've clearly defined in rule, advanced technical certificates, enhanced skills certificates, continuing education certificates, occupational skills awards. That's probably the one that is going to be the biggest interest for all community colleges now, occupational skills awards, because that really wasn't a funding, component in the past. Institutional credentials leading to licensure or certification, and then third-party credentials. And so those are now all in rule, and we've are writing the new guidelines based on what that rule is. So to finish up with, that's been all of phase 1. That's all up until about 4 weeks ago. We've been doing all of that work, working with the stakeholder work group. And then 4 weeks ago, everything was, I had all the information that I needed from the stakeholder work group. And then I took the guidelines for instructional programs and workforce education and deconstructed it, took it apart, and now we've restructured it based on what those 5 areas have been rewritten into rule. And now we've got what is an introduction, and which has the introduction of what the guidelines are. Oh, by the way, don't ask me what the name of the guidelines are, because we haven't got a really catchy name for it like GIPWE yet. But we have the areas of the guidelines are, the first chapter is all about the introduction and giving an overview, plus a glossary of terms. And the glossary of terms has become much more extensive based on House Bill 8. And then you get into what will be probably the second chapter, and the second chapter is about the applied associate degree approval and certificate approval process. And in there, we've been very specific and very deliberate about telling institutions, this is your responsibility and this is what you need to do. And we've actually incorporated sections of other rules that we say, refer to Rule 2.4 in Chapter A, subchapter Z, whatever. And so consequently, we put that rule in there as well to make it easier for the schools to go, oh, okay, this is what I need to do, based on criteria, based on the approval process. The next, and that'll be for both applied associate and certificate. The next chapter is about local rule. The chapter after that is about CTE course maintenance and approval. And then we have a very large chapter. And that chapter is about, it's called guidance resources. It's about best practices that have been put in place and have been part of GIPWE in the past, but they weren't based on codified rules. So now we're telling you, these are all the recommendations based on what education practitioners from across the state have said, this is how we should do things. This is our practice. And so those are all strongly recommended things that you need to focus on. And there may be some points in those resources down the road as I continue to work with the stakeholder work group where they say, this really should be part of rule because it's that important. And I would use the example of currently we don't have rule written around advisory committees as far as what the minimum guidelines or minimum standards would be for how advisory committees are put together and what we're looking for in an advisory committee as far as participation and how that advisory committee operates. So there's been some conversation and the work groups like, that's something that we might want to think about and have that in rules. So then it's clearly defined, and then we would have like an extra chapter on that, for instance. And one other area that I didn't mention or bring up was the Workforce Education Course Manual Advisory Committee. That advisory committee was codified into rule several years back. Part of that was that they not only oversee courses and provide recommendations to the coordinating board, but also that they hold workshops with subject matter experts, and they run these workshops to revise courses, add courses, and archive courses. So that is in place, and we revised it to make sure that there's a true understanding of what their role is in helping the coordinating board make sure that courses are current and keeping up with technology. So the next phases, we're going to get GIPWE finalized, or excuse me, the Career and Technical Education Guidelines finalized. Don't know if that's the final name, so like I said, don't quiz me on that. And that it's in the final stages of edits and revision right now. And then we're looking at, going back and looking at understanding stackable credentials, and then phase 4 is aligning, looking at and aligning programs of study with how we can work with stackable credentials that have been put in place for across the state. Questions for me?
Hi, Jeff. Luke Dowden from Alamo Colleges District. Appreciate your update. Just want to share a request for the committee, the work group that you have, is just a real deeper understanding of what constitutes an ICLC, what documentation is going to be accepted by the coordinating board, so that those items that we work on, we build, are relevant in terms of funding. And then the other piece that's unknown is third-party credentials. We know, again, I'm going back to a memo that was produced in January, so right before you began, right? That said, hey, these things are fundable, but for us, it's like, what evidence are you going to need? Because we've got students that are earning third-party credentials that are professional certificates that do lead to high-wage, high-demand jobs, but we're not sure what evidence that the board's going to be requesting. And so we don't want to lose those opportunities for funding. And again, I don't want to speak for my colleagues on the call, but I think we all have got the same kind of idea of, what are the opportunities in those two areas specifically. So if your committee reaches a point where you need use cases, I offered this before to Associate Commissioner Rector in June. I'm offering it again in August, that we've got a number of use cases we would love to go through and say, what does that fit? Does that not fit? What's missing? Is it 85% there? But I think there's a lot of use cases across the state. We certainly are not the only one. We need some help. We need some guidance, please.
Sure. And I would say that, we've done a pretty good job of lining that out in rule, and that's going to go into also the guidelines as far as what that criteria will be and what is necessary to make sure that an ICLC and or third-party credentials has the proper criteria. That rule is all of those passed on July 25th. They are in the Texas Register, and so you're more than I would say take a look at what is in the Texas Register right now under those particular rules, and then if you have additional questions and or you want to provide cases that we can look at, we could do that.
Thanks so much.
Certainly. Other questions? Well, I appreciate your time, everyone. I've got work to do on guidelines, so I'm going to step aside as well because I'm in the editing process. So if you have any additional questions, you can email me. My email is jeff.parks@highered.texas.gov. Thank you very much.
Jeff, thank you for being here. We hope to see you again soon. And this is an ongoing opportunity for us to exchange information. So I'm certain you will be advised about our upcoming schedule, what's that set in the new membership year, but really appreciate you taking the time to walk through those items. Many of them I was unfamiliar with from a senior institution, not working as much with workforce development. So took some good notes. Sounds like you're making great strides in a short amount of time. So congratulations on that progress, and we look forward to collaborating and contributing to your success.
I appreciate your time and thanks for having me.
Have a productive afternoon and a great long weekend.
All right. Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
All right, now we will hop back up to item 8A, which is our coordinating board updates. And Dr. Kyla Torrey will start those. And I think you have most all of them. Got one near the end.
Well, hi, everyone. Okay. Okay, digital learning updates first. Quite a few things on the list, specifically regards LTAC. First, the Adapting to Innovations subcommittee of LTAC, which is comprised of some LTAC members and some institutional experts from around the state within Adapting to Innovation and Artificial Intelligence. They met earlier this month. We're nailing down a vision, mission, and goals for that group. And our aim is to meet quarterly from here forward. So sometime before this LTAC meeting, that group will be meeting. One of the first goals of that group was going to be to provide feedback and Texas institutional examples of innovative work for the Adapting to Innovation playbook that we are in the process of building, which is modeled after our successful OER playbook, which guides systems change at institutions around OER work based in research. So the AI or Adapting to Innovation playbook will be based on some of the research that we've done. To date, the Adapting to Innovation subcommittee may also consider some work groups in particular topic areas moving forward. So if there are other members of this group who would like to participate in sort of a time-bound topic-specific group within that subcommittee, let us know. And we can also provide more information about that as that develops. Second, directly related to this group, and this is a very exciting one, is that we, as in THUCB staff, met with our student member recently, Esmeralda Gonzalez, and she has very graciously agreed to chair a student group for LTAC, a student subcommittee. So the idea would be that we would have each of you in LTAC nominate a student from your institution to participate in a subcommittee chaired by Esmeralda. They would talk about issues related to students and digital learning and learning technologies. And they would also meet sometime before the quarterly LTAC meeting. And then Esmeralda, we would put a standing agenda item on the LTAC agenda for Esmeralda to kind of give us an update about what the students are discussing in that meeting. So we will be sending out a nomination form with an email after this meeting to ask each of you to nominate a student to be part of that group. Esmeralda, I don't know if you we want to thank you, first of all, because this is this is something, it's more responsibility to take on, and we appreciate how enthusiastic you were about doing that.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be considered. And I think it's a great idea. We can bring some more input from our student body into this, our committee that we're, executing. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you again. We're very excited about forming a student group. So this will be great. And we will be looking for kind of a variety of students at different levels, different types of major, all the things. The idea will be to get kind of a diverse group together. So we'll be taking your nominations shortly on that. Any questions on those two things related directly to LTAC before I move on? Okay. As far as work from the Division of Digital Learning, a couple of OER related things. One is that in July, we kicked off the Texas OER Fellowship Program, which is a program that supports mentor relationships for OER use creation and capacity building at institutions and statewide. This was created based on research that we did with ISKME that encouraged mentoring relationships between institutions and OER. Because Texas has a very long history of excellence in OER, the first cohort of fellows we have called the Founding Fellows, and they are comprised of faculty, librarians, staff, administrators from Texas institutions who already had considerable existing experience and leadership in open education and OER. Those 10 fellows have spent their summer co-creating a vision for open education in the state, which is the future of Texas education is open, and we get there together. Gives you chills, right? And they have also been building a curriculum for the future fellows cohorts. The year 1 fellows cohort has already been selected, and they will kick off their year of programming and mentoring at the Open Texas Conference, which is in September. We're fortunate to have so much OER expertise in the state that the year 1 fellows are also experts in their own right in OER and open education, and they will be serving as sort of peer reviewers of the curriculum as they are going through it to really get it stellar for the next cohorts of fellows. And we will call for a year 2 cohort of fellows at some point in the next academic year. We'll keep you posted on that. Speaking of Open Texas registration is now open for Open Texas 2024. This is a conference that's co-organized by the coordinating board and the Texas Digital Library. It's free and it's virtual, so there's no excuse not to go, or at least register. It's going to be held September 25th through 27th. And the theme for 2024 is Global Horizons of Open Education, the View from Texas. I want to do a special call out to Dr. Tanja Connerly, who's a professor of sociology at San Jacinto College, and our very own Nikki Whiteside, who's Assistant Vice Chancellor for Instructional Innovation and Support at San Jacinto College. They are the conference co-chairs this year, and they are putting together a fabulous program for everyone. We are going to announce the full program for the conference soon, but a sneak peek is that the opening keynote address will be given by Miss Elizabeth Bratz, who as a student served as board member for the Open Ed Conference 2024 and serves as a volunteer mentor for the Student Advisor Committee within Spark. And then the closing plenary panel will delve into different perspectives on the global open education movement. Dr. Michelle Singh, who many of you know is the Assistant Commissioner of Digital Learning at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. She'll provide the Texas perspective. Jeff Gallant, who's the Director of Affordable Learning Georgia and part of the Doers Steering Committee, will provide the national perspective. And Alan Levine, who's Director of Innovation and Community Engagement for OE Global, will provide the global perspective. And then Dr. Judith Sebesta, who is founder and principal at Sebesta Education Consulting, will moderate that panel. The Division of Digital Learning is also going to be holding a town hall during Open Texas to envision the future of open education in Texas. And we will be joined by Nicole Allen of Spark, Liliana Diaz of Witchy, and Dr. Kathy Esmiller of Doers to build on the national conversation on OER strategy that they began last year and are continuing. And then we will also have breakout rooms so that the open education community in Texas can talk together about where do we go from here. Okay, that's the OER news. Moving right along, if there are no questions. The Star Awards. We have nominations for the 2024 Star Awards being accepted right now. That is the THECB award to recognize outstanding institutional work towards building a talent-strong Texas. There is a digital learning category for the Star Awards this year. focused on innovation and increasing affordability through digital learning. We are accepting nominations through September 4th, and the awardees will be celebrated at the Higher Edge Conference in December. Speaking of higher edge, that's happening in December 12th and 13th. And we're considering how to potentially connect a December LTAC meeting to that conference, so we'll stay tuned. Okay, last thing that I would like to say is just to announce that the Division of Digital Learning at the Coordinating Board has been selected as one of 4 recipients of the 2024 WCET Outstanding Work Awards, the WOW Awards. Best acronym ever. Wow. We'll be accepting the award at the WCET annual meeting in October, and I just want to publicly give my thanks and appreciation to the digital learning team, who are not only rock stars, they are also lovely people, and so it's great that they're being recognized. We are being recognized for our work.
There's also another recognition from WCET that we'd like to share with you, and that is for our very own Dr. Kyla Torrey. She will be the recipient at this upcoming annual summit of WCET of the Sally M. Johnstone Award. And if you're familiar with WCET or have been for some time, you know that Sally was the founding executive of WCET and served 1989 to 2006. Creating the foundation of the organization, really. And she's held several leadership positions at various organizations before retiring in 2023 from the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, NCHEMS. So very illustrious award, and it goes to someone who has demonstrated leadership, including thought leadership, in an area affecting digital learning, including digital teaching and learning, including policy and practice related arenas, and certainly a very deserving recipient. So we are pleased to have you in our company and exerting your leadership here as well. Exerting my
leadership.
She likes to exert the leadership. Yeah. Go with that. That can be your little title on LinkedIn. Exerter.
When my team gets annoyed at me, I'm going to tell them that you told me I could exert leadership.
Exert away. You have an award to help you with that. So yeah, I just want to take a moment and recognize Kyla's accomplishment and recognition of her efforts. So congratulations. All right, and I don't think you have anything else under CP updates, but
no,
the next item.
Now I'm gonna cry, so I'll just be over here in the car.
And 7 is yours also, so got no time.
Okay, deep breath, here we go.
So we're gonna jump back up to item 7, which is a discussion of statewide higher education activities pertaining to generative artificial intelligence.
Okay, so we talked about the Adapting to Innovation Subcommittee, right? That is sort of they look at the larger picture of how do we adapt to innovative pedagogies, emerging technologies, all of these things that's there happening in the state. And then more specifically, we have a number of work streams happening right now related to artificial intelligence. So one is the Facilitated Learning Network, which is a cohort of mostly faculty, a few staff participants who completed some coursework in Coursera to learn foundations for using AI for teaching and learning, and also in one of 3 tracks, either prompt engineering using AI tools like custom GPTs, and then other considerations for using AI like ethical considerations. That cohort also participated in synchronous facilitated sessions, and those were facilitated by members of our project advisory group, either those people themselves or people at their institutions, and those are representatives of the University of North Texas, this person over here to my right, the University of Texas at Austin, San Jacinto College, and Austin Community College. So they helped facilitate those synchronous sessions, and in those, the participants went deeper into conversations about using AI in their practice. Overall, participants in that first cohort have rated the program very highly and commented that what they learned would be highly applicable to their work, so we're happy about that. There were 174 participants in cohort 1, and we are kicking off cohort 2 September 12th and going through the fall. Overall, we had about 650 applications over both cohorts, and so we are going to be offering those who we can't offer slots to. We only have so much bandwidth, but in the actual FLN, we're going to offer them the opportunity to take the Google AI Essentials course for free. So at least they're getting some foundational information. We do also have webinars that are free and open to the public, so that if you can't participate in the FLN, at least you can get some fun conversations going on about AI and how to use it in teaching and learning. So we've had 2 so far. The first one was on adapting to innovation and the Texas landscape of AI. And that was Dr. Singh and I discussing the landscape research that the coordinating board did on AI in the state. And we had 705 people registered for that one. And that video is available on DL Texas right now if you're interested in catching up on that. The second one we just had on August 21st, and that was AI meets OER, Unleash Creativity and Navigate Licensing. And that was Dr. Judith Sevesta, who's been doing a course on AI and OER for the California Community College system, and she brought some of her insight to us in that webinar, and we had 735 people register for that one. The numbers keep climbing. September 11th, we'll be talking about AI-powered teaching and learning, and that is a panel of educators from our 4 project advisory group institutions who are going to be talking about their use of AI in the classroom and sort of practical considerations for teaching students and engaging students and all of that. As of this morning, we had 612 registered for that one, still a little bit away, and we're going to do another push next week. So if you will send out the DL Texas website where all of those are, and you are welcome to register or have anyone at your institution register. They are free and open. We also have 2 more coming up in October, one on cultivating responsible and ethical AI practices. That will be a panel of administrators talking through how they're doing that. And then at the end of October, we'll have one on that will be mostly live demonstrations on using AI tools to create dynamic course content and engage students. So lots happening there. As far as upcoming plans, Texas Digital Learning Week. Coming up in November. I say it like that because it's the second one, so now it's official, and so it's a thing that everyone should know. Texas Digital Learning Week, well, I'll say it like that, right? That's coming up in November. That will include one day that is AI convening. And then the 3rd Digital Learning Summit is coming up in February, and that will be focused on adapting to innovation. So we'll be sending out more information on both of those things, particularly Texas Digital Learning Week, shortly, so stay tuned for that. I think that's what I got.
All right.
Unless you want to add anything, Patrick.
I think you covered it aptly. You exerted your leadership very ably there.
Thank you so much.
Any questions from the committee on generative AI activities or anything you'd like to share from your own institutions? No? All right.
I just want to say that some of my colleagues have participated in the professional development offered through the coordinating board for AI, and they have really loved that. And they said that it has been immensely valuable.
Thank you for that feedback.
And I'll go ahead and add that at Del Mar College, we had someone go through it, Dr. Bridget Harden, and we have benefited greatly from that because as she was going through it, she was also creating a professional development faculty course for us, and that is going to be available to our faculty here in just a few weeks. So great work. Thank you.
That's exciting to hear. Thank you. And I would encourage you, if you haven't already, and many of you probably have, to find an opportunity to circulate that information to your campus faculty. I know we reached out to associate deans to send it to faculty members, as well as our provost, to put in a weekly letter to faculty, let them know it's coming up, put it in a campus-wide newsletter for faculty and staff. And we've seen great registrations as a result. So if you have the opportunity to put a communication plan around spreading the word about the AI-empowered webinars, I know it would be greatly appreciated both by those who have put the program together and are presenting, but I think by your faculty as well. So just would encourage you along those lines.
I will get a larger cap on the number of participants who can come and Zoom if I have to. So let's do it.
She'll do it too.
Get it. Yeah, I will
Yeah.
exert my leadership somewhere, somehow.
Infinite capacity. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much for that. And I think lunch has arrived here. Am I correct, Amy? Okay. And our next item is to break into our work group. So we will discuss that and make sure everybody has their assignments. And then we will have roughly a 15-minute break for people to go to different rooms to participate here, grab lunch remotely or here, and if you need to take a restroom break. And then we will be in those sessions for our breakout groups for 45 minutes after that 15-minute break. But for now, we're going to go to item 9 and our work groups and subcommittee sessions and our groups on quality assurance, research, and operations. And I believe we have some notes here on what each of those is likely to cover this time. So quality assurance, what I have is that you will discuss IPDE exemplars, and that Marianne and Carrie will be with that group. Is that accurate?
That's what you all have been working on, so.
Are there
Continue. Great work. That's all.
Are there other items that you'll be discussing as well that you know of now? And if not, that's fine, but.
No, I think we're going to be focusing on the exemplars that we do have, discussing those.
Excellent, excellent. And then research, Kylie, you're in that group, and focus will be on dissemination of AI landscape survey data. Anything else? Either committee chair or Kyla?
I have nothing else planned, but no doubt that conversation will go in many directions.
All right, sounds like, is that your elevator pitch for, yeah?
That's my elevator pitch. It's gonna be really exciting.
Many directions. And finally, operations, IPD out of cycle submissions, discussion that Dr. Loeffler's mentioned earlier that needs to take place. Discussion of June, December SACS meetings. And is that relative to IPDE as well?
Yes.
Yes, all IPDE all the time. So also discuss the IPDE rubric and the student advisory group. And Andrew and Gwen is what I have here, and my notes will be in that group. Anything else that you plan to discuss, committee chair?
That is where we're starting. We're starting there.
All right, and we've been doing this for a while with this group, so does everybody know what their assigned group is and where they're participating? And Ashley, we need to either find you a home or recall where Brett was contributing. Do you have that in the notes?
I'm a big AI person, so I would love to jump in the research
Come
room.
hang out with us, Ashley. Come do it.
All right. We'll see you in the research room. All right, and I still have that it's roughly about 11:15, so maybe we just call it a 15-minute break till 11:30. That's a little bit less than 15 minutes. And you can go ahead and go to your rooms now. So we make sure we got all that technically worked out. And then you can just turn your camera off until that session actually starts at 11:30. So 11:30, we'll start our work groups. Got a few minutes offline. Until then, we'll go for 45 minutes to 12:15, and then we'll reconvene as the full group to listen to the subcommittee reports and discussion about those. Any questions? All right, we'll be going to break now and then into our breakout rooms. Thank you very much.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Charlene.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Before we start our discussions, Dr. Lofters, if we could just quickly affirm that we still have quorum. It appears we do, but you get a quick count. 2.
We are at quorum. We're good.
All right, fantastic. We have quorum. So we will proceed with item 10, which is discussion of work groups and subcommittee session reports. And we will start with quality assurance.
We had a thrilling discussion. It was actually a good discussion. There was a lot of it was thought discussion, actually. We took a look at a couple of items for that we want to be examples in the IPDE for institutions filling it out to be able to look at that. We had a couple of questions about the logistics, like in the smart sheet. Is there going to be a link so that an institution could click on the link and then it would come up, the example would come up as a PDF on it. That's one way, I guess it could be. I'm not sure exactly what the logistics are going to be. So, and then there was, we also wondered about, is the word sample or example maybe going to be on the document, just to make it clear that, hey, this is not another form you're having to fill out. It is literally a sample. We would think it would be obvious, but we're in it. We all know what we're talking about. And that is not the case for every institution. And Michelle graciously sent forward some questions that her institution had about the request for some of these documents. So we're going to be looking at that as well as we go through the fall. I think we have our first two. We did make a couple of modifications to those, but they were relatively minor modifications. And like I said, we're planning to have more meetings. Robert's going to be sending out a doodle poll to the rest of the work group so that we can get our next meeting on the calendar. So we know not everyone's going to be able to show up every time, but we'll move forward with everyone who can show up. Thanks to everyone for that. We have, I think, for the whole IPDE so far, not everyone has submitted, but so far, I think we have 18 to 20-ish examples. We got some more examples from Wade today. So thanks to everybody on that. Robert, anything you need to add?
No, ma'am. I think the only downfall of our group is we're trying to be so perfect. But that's a good thing, and working with the folks that we have, we'll get it knocked out in no time. But great job, folks.
Yeah.
That's
our
great.
update.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Robert and team. Any questions for the group? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the report from our research subcommittee. Jeff?
Hey, y'all. Research, we started with a presentation. Kyla ran us through a presentation they recently delivered on the landscape survey on AI in higher education that was conducted earlier this year. Primarily, respondents were administrators at colleges, universities, and health institutions around the state. They also talked about how, Texas it's really clear in talking to folks around the country that Texas is really leading the way on a lot of this stuff, and especially because a lot of the work and resources that are coming out of digital learning. So yay to them for all their really great work to support higher education in the state with resources around AI. The survey was mainly centered on policies and resources at institutions around that. So that was really interesting to hear about. We talked mostly about plans in the next few months regarding more information gathering on AI at colleges and universities around the state. They want to rerun that landscape survey that was primarily directed at administrators, including and also administer new surveys for faculty and also for students that would come out of the student advisory group that was mentioned earlier in the larger meeting. We debated a little bit the timing of the rerunning the landscape survey because it was administered in April, I think, if that's not mistaken, and they're talking about doing it by the end of the year, is that too soon? We didn't come to a strong resolution, but I think a lot of us tend to agree that it might be a little quick, but a lot of strong support for doing a faculty and student survey. The big thing there will be publicizing those surveys so that they get into the hands of faculty and students so we can get the response rate and the sample size that are necessary to really make robust findings from those. So be on the lookout for those. I'm sure we'll talk about that in the next quarterly meeting because those probably won't go out before then, but just stay tuned because we are going to need help from LTAC to publicize those surveys so that they can get a good, robust sample. And that was what we talked about. So yeah. Thanks. If there's anything I missed, y'all fill me in, but that was the gist of it.
Excellent report. Any questions?
I had a question. The survey that you're planning to send out, this is going to be like statewide at different institutions?
So the landscape survey was sent to institutions and it went through the normal channels, as I understand it. So through the chief academic officer, chief instructional officer at various institutions, and those were the primary respondents. Whereas the student and faculty survey may be handled a little bit differently, where there may be more of an opportunity to publish or publicize it a little more widely rather than through just the normal channels. But my understanding was the previous landscape survey went through those regular channels from the coordinating board to liaisons at the colleges and schools, colleges and universities, and then that was distributed from there. Does that answer your question, Andrew?
Yes, I believe so. The only reason I was asking was thinking about the data submission committee people.
Oh, yes. I was on the data governance committee at the time. That's why I got that started yet, but yeah, we do have a data governance process within the agency, but we went through it to get it to all the institutions. I will do the same for the faculty and students.
That's what I was just thinking about. All right.
Excellent. Any other questions for Jeff? All right, we're going to move forward then to the last subcommittee report, which is our operations group. Luke?
Luke had to leave for another meeting, so Sarah Lee is going to share the rubric that she has developed, and we had a good discussion. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you, Poonam. Yes, we did have a good discussion about the overall format of the rubric and got down into some of the specifics. So overall, we're thinking about wanting to direct this so that the reviewer is really considering, does the institution provide evidence of appropriately addressing this principle? We understand that all institutions are going to be providing information that's very diverse depending on the institution type and size, et cetera. And so we want to give the reviewer a chance to also have an annotation and examples that they're recording in that rubric, and give them an opportunity to make recommendations to the institution as well. And that's both for institutions that are off the charts on some of these things, or ones that need a little bit of improvement in some areas. But that opportunity to give a recommendation to the institution, that's really thinking about the process of continuous improvement and how this can be a formative process for the institution. So if people are going to be sitting down reviewing these, we want to make sure that those ideas that they're thinking about are captured so that that can be passed back to the institution for their own processes. Before the next LTAC meeting, the operations subcommittee plans to meet at least once, maybe 2 times, to continue looking at the rubric and discussing it, and to give the THECB staff some time to think about it and review it as well. So that will be coming up, and hopefully before the next LTAC meeting, there'll be a lot of progress done on that. And we discussed the idea of even pre-releasing it to the initial institutions who are going through the process this year. I think everyone is aware that it may be an iterative process, and we really do want it to be formative. And so there may be some tweaks that need to happen down the road. That's the update on the rubric. Poonam, if you wanted to cover anything else that we talked about.
No, I think, Sarah, you covered everything. I think we want to keep our focus on making sure that every institution has an opportunity to provide the context in which they are applying this rubric and in their plan, and we want to be constructive and supportive in our feedback.
Excellent, thank you. And Sarah, I wondered, you're rolling off the LTAC committee. I wondered if you discussed plans to hang around to see this matrix through in the next couple months. You don't have to give an answer here, but.
That's okay, Patrick. Yes, we did talk about meeting over the next couple months, so I'll be included in that meeting to help with the final pieces on the rubric. Yes.
Fantastic. Appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? All right. Very substantive sessions and great reports. Appreciate that very much. And that brings us near the end of our agenda, which is item number 11, discussion of future agenda items and reviewing our meeting calendar. So I'll take that second part first, our meeting calendar. Something we did for this year was go ahead and once we had our new members on board and we could communicate with them, that would be after September 1st. We did a poll to see what time most people could be available. And then we set our schedule for the full year. And that helped us go ahead and get it on the books of members so that they were more likely to be able to attend, knowing that still things can come up. It also helped us to avoid certain times of year and certain conferences that many of us might be participating in, professional development activities, et cetera. So unless there's any objections or we want to discuss it any further, we would like to go forward doing the same thing. That is not setting our next meeting or meetings today, but very early in the new membership year in September when we have new members onboarded, that we can send it out and set up our next meeting and the subsequent quarterly meetings for our cycle ending August 31st, 2025. So any concerns about that or comments about that plan and setting our next meeting dates? All right, and this was a recommendation that came out of our operations committee, and I think it's made things that we've got great attendance today, and I think that's been generally the case this year. I think it's helped having them on our schedule so far ahead. So in terms of future agenda items, we have these set categories that we often talk about here with updates from the coordinating board. We'll have ongoing connections with WCET and VAN on distance education regulations, of course, and with Cam and NC Sarah and Jeff with House Bill 8 and our interest in collaborating with the Division of Workforce Education. Anything else that any of our members see on the horizon that would merit going ahead and putting on an agenda for our next quarterly meeting? We got it all. That's good. We'll have another opportunity as we plan the meeting schedule to determine if there's anything else that members would like to have added to the agenda. So we are good on that note. So with that, any other comments, questions for the good of the body? Not, we're ending early, which is okay. You know, travel time back to Denton is still going to be about 4 hours, but going to land right in rush hour. But yeah, it's a 3-day weekend for many folks. So appreciate everybody so much and your commitment to being here, staying here, doing the work in between, leading at your institutions. This is frankly one of the best parts of my job at UNT is getting to participate with statewide leaders, both at the coordinating board at your institutions. So keep up the good work. You are making a difference in Texas and in the lives of our students and our faculty. So thank you, and we will see you in a few months, and enjoy your time off.